He broke my heart, so I made him regret it in the most unexpected way. You know how some couples make everyone believe they got it all figured out? That was us. John and I were that couple the goals people posted about, the pair who finished each other's sentences, the ones everyone in our friend circle thought would get married first. And honestly, for the longest time, I believed it too. My name's Angela. I'm 27, an interior designer living in Seattle. And until a few months ago, I thought I was living the dream, or at least something close to it. John and I met at a friend's birthday party 4 years ago. He was the kind of guy who could make a whole room turn toward him without even trying. That natural charm, confident, witty, and a little bit reckless, it pulled me in like gravity. I was quieter, more observant, but somehow with him, I felt louder. Seen. We started dating after 2 weeks of late night phone calls and long coffee runs. Within months, we were inseparable. He'd pick me up after work just to kidnap me for ice cream. We'd drive around Lake Washington, blasting music, talking about everything, our families, our childhood dreams, even baby names. Yeah, we really thought we'd go the distance. Our relationship wasn't perfect, but it was stable. He was my person. The guy who remembered my coffee order, who brought flowers to my office for no reason, who held me when I had panic attacks about work deadlines. I loved him with that stupid, all-consuming kind of love that makes you forget there's a world beyond two people. For 4 years, we built our own version of forever. We talked about buying a house together somewhere in Capitol Hill, maybe with a small garden. He wanted a dog, I wanted a reading nook by the window. We even started saving for it. So when he told me he got a huge job offer in Los Angeles, I was proud of him. Just 6 months, babe, he said, brushing his thumb across my cheek. They need me to help launch the new campaign, but I'll be back before you even miss me. He was standing by the door with his luggage when he said that. I remember smiling, pretending to be okay with it. 6 months, I repeated, piece of cake. He kissed me goodbye that morning. I didn't know that kiss would be the beginning of the end. The first few weeks weren't bad. We talked every night. He'd call after work, telling me about the crazy LA traffic or the palm trees outside his apartment. I'd send him pictures of my designs and ask his opinions, even though I knew he didn't care about furniture angles or wall palettes. We planned visits, made lists of places to go when I came down. I even kept one of his shirts by my bed, his favorite gray one that smelled like his cologne. But slowly, something shifted. The calls got shorter. The texts got fewer. At first, it was little things, him saying he was too tired after work or missing my calls and replying hours later. I tried to be understanding. I mean, new city, new job, big responsibility, of course. He'd be busy. But then came the excuses. Sorry, babe, meetings ran late. Phone died. Didn't have good reception. The classic ones. The ones you tell yourself are fine until they start to sound rehearsed. By the third month, I was the only one reaching out. He'd reply with emojis, half-hearted words, or sometimes not at all. The warmth that used to pour through our calls was gone, replaced by this cold, distant tone I couldn't recognize. I remember one night vividly. It was raining in Seattle, that slow, heavy kind of rain that makes everything quiet. I called him just wanting to hear his voice. He picked up after 5 rings. Hey babe, I said softly. How was your day? Busy, he replied flatly. I heard laughter in the background, a woman's laughter. Are you with someone? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. He hesitated. Just coworkers. We're celebrating the campaign's progress. Oh, don't overthink it, Angie. You know I love you. But his voice didn't sound like love. It sounded like habit. That night, I stared at my ceiling for hours, wondering when love starts to fade. Is it gradual, like a candle burning out slowly, or sudden, like a door slamming shut? I wanted to confront him, but a part of me was terrified that I already knew the answer. 2 weeks later, I decided to surprise him. It was impulsive, something I'd never done before. Riley, my best friend, told me it was romantic. Go show your man you care, she said. Sometimes they need a reminder. I bought a ticket to LA, packed a small bag, and took a Friday off. I wanted to see his face when he opened the door. I pictured his arms around me, his smile when he realized I came all that way just to be with him. I landed at LAX in the afternoon. The air was warm, the kind that smells faintly of sunscreen and city dust. I texted him, hey, what are you up to, just to check if he was home. He replied an hour later, just chilling. You? Perfect. I grabbed a cab, gave the driver his address, a nice apartment complex in West Hollywood. The building looked sleek, modern, very John. I still remember my heart racing in the elevator. I was nervous but excited. I even checked my reflection, fixed my hair, practiced my smile. When I reached his door, I didn't knock right away. I stood there for a second, listening. I heard faint music and the sound of laughter again, a woman's laugh. My stomach dropped. I told myself it was probably the TV. I told myself not to assume. But then I knocked. There was silence for a few seconds, then footsteps. The door opened halfway. And there she was. A woman, maybe mid-20s, gorgeous, wearing my hoodie, my gray hoodie that I left in his closet. Her hair was messy, like she'd just woken up. She smiled for a second, thinking I was someone else, and then her face fell. Can I help you? She said. I froze. My mouth went dry. Is John here? I asked quietly. Her eyes flickered with recognition like she knew who I was. She opened the door wider, and there he was, behind her, barefoot, wearing sweatpants, his hair tousled. The look on his face when he saw me, shock, guilt, panic, said everything. Angela, what are you surprising you? I said, my voice barely a whisper. No one spoke for a few seconds. The only sound was the music playing from his Bluetooth speaker, a song I once put on his playlist. He started fumbling for words. It's not what it looks like. I almost laughed. That line straight out of a bad movie. The girl stepped back awkwardly. I'll give guys a minute, she muttered, disappearing into the bedroom, my hoodie still on her. I looked at him, really looked, and suddenly, all those missed calls, short replies, and excuses made perfect, devastating sense. How long? I asked quietly. He ran his hand through his hair. Angela, please, how long? I repeated, my voice sharper. He sighed, defeated. A couple months. A couple months. That meant while he was telling me he loved me, while I was losing sleep worrying about him, he was already with someone else. The thing about heartbreak is that it doesn't always hit you like a punch. Sometimes it's quieter, slower. It sinks in like cold water until you realize you're drowning. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I just stood there. Was she worth it? I asked after a long pause. He looked away. I didn't mean for this to happen. I felt lost. LA's different, you know? And Sophia, her name's Sophia. I said flatly. He shut his eyes, like saying her name made it worse. I nodded slowly. Okay. He looked at me, confused. That's it? I smiled faintly. Yeah, that's it. And then I turned around and walked out. He didn't follow me. The air outside was thick with heat and noise, but I barely noticed. I walked until I found a small park nearby. I sat on a bench, staring at the ground, trying to process what just happened. 4 years. 4 years of love, trust, plans gone in one afternoon. My hands were shaking, but I felt strangely calm, like my heart had gone numb. I thought about calling Riley, but I didn't. I didn't want to say it out loud yet, because once you say it, it becomes real. Instead, I just sat there until the sun started to set, watching people walk their dogs, kids laughing, cars passing, like the world kept moving, even though mine had just stopped. Eventually, I booked a last-minute flight back to Seattle. I didn't even text John. I left the key to our shared storage unit in his mailbox and deleted every picture of us on my phone. On the plane, I stared out the window and whispered to myself, "You're okay." I wasn't, but I needed to believe it. When I got home, I didn't tell anyone for 3 days. I went to work, pretended everything was fine, smiled when clients complimented my designs. But every time I looked at something he'd given me, the coffee mug, the photo frame, the sweater, my chest tightened. On the 4th day, I finally told Riley. She was furious. "That piece of garbage doesn't deserve your tears," she said. "We should egg his car." I laughed for the first time in days. But deep down, I wasn't angry, not yet. I was empty. People talk about heartbreak like it's a storm, messy, loud, chaotic. But for me, it was silence. A stillness that felt endless. Until that silence turned into something else. Because somewhere in that quiet, something inside me shifted. It wasn't hate. It wasn't rage, it was clarity. I realized I didn't want revenge in the typical sense. I didn't want to ruin his life or beg him to regret me. I wanted to rebuild mine. I wanted him to see me someday, not as the girl he left, but as the woman he could never have again. He broke my heart. But in doing so, he gave me something stronger than love, purpose. And I remember the exact thought that ran through my head that night as I stood in front of my mirror, wiping off the last tear. He thought I'd cry. He thought I'd chase him. He had no idea I'd make him wish he never met me. If heartbreak had a sound, mine was silence. No screaming, no crying, no dramatic messages, just the quiet hum of my phone that would never buzz with his name again. After I came back from Los Angeles, I didn't text John. I didn't ask for an explanation or demand closure or post cryptic breakup quotes online. I just vanished. I deleted his number, blocked him on everything, Instagram, Facebook, even LinkedIn. I didn't want to see his face, his updates, or worse, his new life. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of knowing he still occupied space in my head. That was my first act of self-respect, the first time I chose me. People think disappearing is easy, that it's just cutting contact and moving on, but it's not. It's fighting the urge to check his profile. It's deleting drafts of texts you'll never send. It's waking up at 2 a.m., reaching for your phone and reminding yourself, no. It's teaching your heart to be quiet when your mind already knows the truth. The first few weeks were brutal. Riley practically lived at my place. She'd show up with takeout and bad rom-coms, forcing me to laugh when all I wanted to do was hide under the covers. "Do you realize," she said one night, halfway through a glass of wine, "you could turn this pain into something epic, like channel it into your designs?" I rolled my eyes. "Riley, I can't even look at a paint swatch without wanting to cry." "Then make sadness your color palette." "Look at it," she said, shrugging. "Turn heartbreak into art." It sounded ridiculous at the time until it didn't. The next morning, I went to our studio. We'd started a small interior design business 2 years ago, mostly local projects, cozy cafes, boutique homes, a few offices, but lately I'd been uninspired, stuck in safe patterns and polite choices. That day, something changed. I took a client's dull modern design plan and ripped it apart literally. I threw out the beige, the monotony, and replaced it with bold textures, raw lines, moody tones. It wasn't safe, it wasn't subtle, but it was me. And when the client saw it, she cried. Not because it was sad, but because it was honest. That moment was the start of something. Over the next few months, work became my therapy. I poured everything I couldn't say into my designs. When I missed him, I stayed late sketching. When I felt angry, I hammered boards together until my hands hurt. When I felt lost, I rearranged spaces until they made sense even if I didn't. And slowly, I started to heal. People noticed. My designs got deeper, more personal. Clients started referring me to others. Riley joked that heartbreak was my new marketing strategy. Then something wild happened. One of our clients, a lifestyle influencer with a huge following, posted a video tour of her new home. She tagged our studio, and within hours, our inbox exploded. Hundreds of messages, collaborations, brand offers, media requests. It was surreal. Overnight, our small studio became one of Seattle's rising stars in interior design. I should have been thrilled, and I was. But a part of me still woke up some mornings thinking of him like a ghost that lingered in the quiet moments. But every time that happened, I reminded myself he doesn't deserve space here anymore. Meanwhile, through mutual friends and social media whispers, because the internet is a small world, I started hearing things about John. His big LA job, not so glamorous anymore. The campaign he led didn't perform as expected. His new life with Sophia, the Instagram perfect couple, started showing cracks. I wasn't looking for this info, but somehow it always found me. Someone sent me a post of them arguing in a restaurant, caught on some gossip account. Another friend mentioned how Sophia was apparently jealous and controlling, how John had started drinking more. The old me might have cared, might have wondered if he missed me. But the new me, she just shrugged. Because for the first time in years, I didn't need him to fall apart for me to feel better. I just needed to live my life so well that he'd realize he could never be part of it again. 3 months after the breakup, I finally went on a solo trip, something I'd always wanted to do but never had the courage for. I went to Portland, stayed at a little Airbnb in the woods, and spent 3 days sketching, journaling, and rediscovering myself. I remember sitting by the fire one night, staring into the flames, thinking about how strange healing is. It doesn't happen all at once, it sneaks up on you. One day, you wake up and realize the thought of him doesn't sting anymore. That was the night I stopped loving John. Not out of bitterness, just release. He became a chapter, a lesson, a scar that didn't hurt anymore. When I came back, Riley greeted me at the airport, waving a coffee like I'd returned from war. "You look peaceful," she said. "I am," I told her, and I meant it. Our business kept growing. We hired 2 new designers, expanded our office, even landed our first celebrity client, a retired football player who wanted a minimalist home that still feels alive. That project changed everything. When it was finished, he posted about it on Instagram, tagging us. It got picked up by a popular design blog, then another, then a magazine. Before I knew it, we were featured in Architectural Digest online, something I dreamed of since college. The caption under the article said, "Angela Brooks, the Seattle designer redefining emotion in modern spaces." I cried when I read that, not because of the success, but because it felt like proof that you can lose everything and still build something beautiful out of the pieces. Of course, the universe has a wicked sense of humor. Because just when I thought I'd left my past behind, it found a way to circle back. One afternoon, Riley walked into the studio holding a new client file. "Big one," she said. "Some company in LA wants us for a high-end office redesign. Massive budget. They specifically requested you." "Me?" I asked, surprised. "Yup, they said they've been following your work since the AD feature." I flipped through the proposal. The company name sounded familiar. Vanguard Creative Group. I couldn't place it at first. "They want an emotional yet modern workspace," Riley continued. "Think art meets ambition. And get this, they're flying you out next week to finalize designs." I smiled. "LA, huh? Guess I'm ready to face that city again?" She grinned. "Full circle moment, babe. If only I'd known how literal that would be." The first thing I noticed when I arrived in LA again was how different it felt. The last time I'd been here, I was broken, lost, and humiliated. But now, I felt grounded. I stayed at a downtown hotel, all glass walls and city lights. That night, I looked out at the skyline and thought, you survived this place once, now you're here to conquer it. The next morning, I went to the Vanguard office for the meeting. The receptionist smiled warmly. "Miss Brooks, they're expecting you. Conference room C." I walked in confidently, holding my sketches and notes. And then I froze, because sitting at the far end of the glass table, looking slightly older, slightly more tired, but unmistakably him, was John. Our eyes met and time stopped. He blinked, clearly shocked. "Angela." For a second, I thought maybe I was hallucinating, that my mind was playing tricks on me. But then Riley's voice echoed in my head. Full circle moment. I composed myself and smiled politely. "Hello, John." He stood up awkwardly, tugging at his tie. "I didn't know you'd be..." "Neither did I interrupted gently, keeping my tone professional. Another man older, clearly the main client, extended his hand. "You two know each other?" John hesitated. "Yeah, we used to work together on a project," I finished smoothly. "A long time ago." He looked at me, surprised. I didn't flinch. The meeting went on. I presented my ideas calm, articulate, confident. I could feel his gaze on me the entire time, but I never once looked directly at him again. When it ended, the client was thrilled. "This is exactly what we want," he said. "You've got vision, Angela. We're lucky to have you." As we shook hands, I caught John watching me, his jaw tight, eyes full of something that looked an awful lot like regret. After the meeting, I stepped outside into the sunlight and took a deep breath. The air felt different, lighter. Riley called immediately. "How'd it go?" "Perfect," I said, smiling. "And the ex?" I laughed softly. Didn't matter because it didn't. He was part of my story, but not my ending. That night, I sat by the hotel window again, looking at the same skyline that once symbolized pain. Only now, it represented power, growth, freedom. It hit me then this was my revenge. Not yelling, not exposing him, not even seeing him miserable. My revenge was becoming someone he couldn't touch anymore. I'd mastered the art of disappearing not just from his life, but from the version of myself that needed him. And as I watched the city lights flicker below, I smiled to myself and whispered, "You lost me once, John, but this time, you'll spend the rest of your life realizing what that really means." If you've ever run into an ex after they shattered your world, you know that weird mix of calm and chaos that floods your veins. That was me the day I saw John again. It had been over a year since I'd last looked into those green eyes, the same ones that once promised forever, then burned everything to ashes. When I walked into that sleek marble lobby in Los Angeles, holding my portfolio and coffee, I didn't expect to see him. But fate has a funny way of looping you right back to the people you've already learned your hardest lessons from. The client, a luxury real estate developer, had hired my studio to design the interiors for their new penthouse series. It was a huge deal, the kind of project that could take my business to the next level. I'd spent weeks preparing, sketching, and sourcing concepts. I wasn't nervous, not anymore. My team trusted me. Riley believed in me. And for the first time in a long time, I believed in myself too. Then I heard a voice that froze me mid-step. Deep, confident, too familiar. "Angela," I didn't even need to turn around to know. I just took a quiet breath and turned anyway. There he was, John, the man who'd once been my everything and then became a ghost in my own story. He looked tired, still handsome, in that effortless, boy-next-door way that used to melt me, but there was a heaviness around his eyes, a stiffness in his smile. I could see the weight of choices catching up to him. His perfectly ironed shirt, the designer watch, the polished act, they couldn't hide it. He looked like a man trying too hard to look okay. "John," I said, like his name was any other name. No bitterness, no nostalgia, just acknowledgement. He smiled, relieved, nervous, maybe both. "Wow, you look incredible. It's been 2 years, I said, cutting him off gently. "Yeah, it's been a while," he nodded, eyes flickering like he was searching for the right words. I didn't give him time. I smiled politely and turned to shake hands with the developer who was now walking toward us. "Angela Carter," I said with confidence, "founder and lead designer at Studio Ember." The man smiled. "We've heard great things about you. Let's get started." And just like that, the meeting began and I switched into full professional mode. For the next hour, I presented layouts, material palettes, and mood boards while John sat quietly across the table. Every time I glanced at him, his gaze lingered longer than it should have. I could almost feel the confusion in him how the woman sitting in front of him wasn't the same one he'd betrayed. This Angela didn't shrink when he spoke. She didn't wait for his approval. She didn't second-guess her worth. She owned the room. By the end of the meeting, the client was thrilled. They approved the initial concept and invited me to lead the design for their flagship unit, the one John's firm was co-investing in. The irony wasn't lost on me. When everyone started packing up, John walked up beside me. "You really impressed them," he said. I smiled faintly. "That's kind of the point." He chuckled awkwardly. "You've changed." "I grew up," I said, slipping my tablet into my bag. "It's what happens when people stop breaking you." He froze for a second, not expecting that kind of honesty, and before he could respond, I was already walking toward the elevator. But that was only the beginning. Over the next few weeks, John became present. Too present. Every time I visited the site for design updates or progress checks, he happened to drop by. Sometimes it was under the pretext of checking project timelines. Other times it was just grabbing coffee around the same time. It was subtle, but not subtle enough for me to miss it. I didn't engage much. I kept things professional, but I could feel his eyes following me, watching how easily I laughed with Liam, the lead architect. Now, let me tell you about Liam. Liam was everything John wasn't. Calm, grounded, and genuinely kind. He didn't flirt or charm. He listened. He noticed the small things, like how I preferred vanilla lattes over black coffee, or how I always tied my hair up when I was deep in design mode. He had this quiet confidence, the kind that doesn't need to be loud to be felt. Our first real conversation happened during a late evening site visit. We were reviewing floor finishes when he said, "I saw your Hollow House project online. That color story was brilliant." I blinked, surprised. "You know my work?" He smiled. "I follow design, not gossip." That line alone earned him a mental gold star. From then on, it was easy talking to him, too easy, maybe. We shared playlists, work frustrations, and stupid jokes about clients who didn't understand lighting plans. There was a warmth there. Familiar, but new. John noticed. Of course he did. He started showing up even more, casually inserting himself into conversations. Sometimes, he'd compliment my work. "You always had an eye for detail, Angie." Other times, he'd say things that carried that annoying undertone of nostalgia, like, "Remember how we used to stay up redesigning our apartment layout?" I didn't bite. Not once. If anything, I made sure my responses were short, polite, detached, and that drove him mad. I could tell because he started slipping up. Once, during a review, he snapped at a junior associate for no reason. Another time, he stayed long after everyone left, lingering around my desk like he wanted to say something but couldn't figure out what. Then one Friday evening, it happened. I was packing up when he finally cornered me in the hallway. Angela, can we talk? Just 5 minutes. I sighed but nodded. We stepped outside onto the balcony overlooking downtown LA. The city lights glimmered below, beautiful, distant, untouchable. He looked nervous. I don't even know where to start. How about the truth? I said, crossing my arms. He ran a hand through his hair, a habit I remembered all too well. Sophia and we didn't work out. She wasn't what I thought. I raised an eyebrow. So you thought she'd be your upgrade? He winced. That's not fair. I tilted my head. No, John. What's not fair is lying to someone who would have moved mountains for you. He stayed silent. I could see guilt written all over him. But guilt wasn't enough anymore. He tried again, his voice softer. I messed up, Angela. I didn't realize what I had until it was gone. I smiled faintly. You didn't realize it because you never really looked. You were too busy chasing the next shiny thing. He reached for me, not physically, but emotionally. Can't we just start over? We had something real. I shook my head. We had something, past tense, and you don't get to hit rewind when you're bored. For a moment, the air between us went still. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. I could tell he wanted to argue, justify, maybe even cry. But I wasn't that soft-hearted girl anymore. I should go, I said. Have a good night, John. And I walked away again. After that, something shifted. John's interactions became messier, emotionally desperate even. He'd send casual texts from new numbers like, hope your week's going well, or loved your latest design post. I ignored them all. But karma was just warming up. A few weeks later, news started spreading through the industry grapevine. Sophia, yes, that Sophia had gone nuclear. Apparently, she found out John had been lying about his finances, his work timeline, and even his involvement in the project that connected us. She exposed him online, posting screenshots, messages, receipts. It was brutal. His firm's PR team tried to control the damage, but the internet doesn't forget. Within days, his professional image started unraveling. Clients pulled back, partnerships froze. And me, I stayed silent. Not out of spite, but out of peace. Because watching karma do its quiet, efficient work is better than any revenge plot I could have orchestrated. When I saw him again after that scandal broke, he looked hollow, like a man haunted by his own reflection. His eyes had lost that spark of arrogance. His clothes, though still expensive, looked like armor that no longer fit. He saw me across the lobby one morning and managed a faint smile. I nodded politely, but didn't stop walking. Liam, who was beside me, noticed. Old friend? He asked casually. I smirked. Old mistake. He laughed, and something about that laugh made me feel light again. Over time, John became a ghost in my new chapter. I didn't block him out of anger, he just faded. My focus was on what I'd built, who I'd become. Liam and I grew closer, and it was nothing like before. It wasn't dramatic or obsessive, it was calm, steady, and honest. He saw me for who I was, not who he wanted me to be. And for the first time in years, that felt like freedom. I realized something through all of it. Revenge doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to destroy. Sometimes the best revenge is showing up in your own life so beautifully that the people who broke you can't even recognize the version of you that survived. Because that's the thing about karma, it's not about punishment, it's about reflection. And when John looked at me, he didn't just see the woman he lost. He saw the mirror of everything he could have been if he hadn't thrown it away. He thought I'd stay broken. He thought he'd move on without consequence. But in the end, I became everything he once claimed to love, confident, fulfilled, untouchable, and he became the ghost of his own mistakes. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need closure. I just needed to live better than the pain he gave me. And, oh, I did. But life wasn't done surprising me yet, because sometimes, even when the past is buried deep, fate finds one last way to test if you're truly over it. And when that moment came, I was ready. If someone told me 2 years ago that my biggest heartbreak would one day turn into my proudest strength, I would have laughed. Because when you're broken, when you're lying on your bathroom floor crying over someone who doesn't care, the word strength feels like a foreign language. But that's the thing about pain, it teaches you fluency in resilience. After everything with John, after karma had its turn, I didn't look back. I poured myself into life, not to prove anything to anyone, but to feel alive again. My studio grew, my designs started getting featured in magazines, influencers and celebrities wanted to collaborate. It was surreal, almost like watching someone else's success story, except it was mine. And through all of it, Liam was there. He wasn't loud or demanding. He didn't try to fix me. He just stood by, steady and warm. He'd walk into my studio with coffee and a smile that made me forget deadlines existed. When I doubted myself before a big client meeting, he'd say, Angela, you don't need luck. You are the reason people call it good taste. I used to laugh and roll my eyes, but deep down, I believed him. That's how it started. Slow, gentle, and real. I didn't fall in love with Liam the way I had fallen for John. I grew into it. By the time my work was nominated for a West Coast Design Award, I realized something. I wasn't chasing love anymore. I was building peace, and if love fit into that, great. If not, I was still whole. Then came the night that unknowingly became my final chapter with John. My studio had been working on a massive interior design exhibition, The Art of Space, a collaborative event showcasing designers who combined architecture and emotion. I'd been chosen to headline it with a solo gallery that featured immersive designs based on the concept of healing from ruin to radiance. Yeah, even the title had my past written all over it. It was hosted in downtown Los Angeles, the same city where my heart had been broken, now the city where I was being celebrated. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. As I stepped into the venue that evening, I felt something shift in me. The crowd buzzed with excitement. Cameras flashed, my name glowed on banners. Angela Carter designing emotion. I was wearing a white silk jumpsuit with gold accents, minimal jewelry, and confidence that no one could fake. Riley was beside me, practically vibrating with pride. Liam was across the room, talking to a few industry leaders, giving me a small nod and that familiar, grounding smile. And then I saw him, John. He stood near the entrance, dressed in a simple suit, looking lost in a sea of people who didn't know or care who he was. For a second, my chest tightened, not from love, but from memory. It's strange, isn't it? How someone can still feel familiar even after they become a stranger. He looked older, not in a bad way, just worn. Like life had been teaching him lessons he wasn't ready for. I turned away. Tonight wasn't about him. But of course, life had other plans. About an hour later, after the press photos and interviews, I was near one of my installations, a mirrored corridor designed to represent transformation. It reflected light and shadow depending on where you stood. It was my favorite piece. I heard footsteps behind me, then softly, Angela. I didn't turn immediately. I just stared at my reflection in the mirrored wall, calm, composed, a woman who no longer flinched at ghosts. Then I faced him. John. He swallowed hard, voice shaking slightly. You look breathtaking. Thank you, I said evenly. Enjoying the event? He let out a small, bitter laugh. It's incredible. You're incredible. You've come so far. I smiled politely. That's what happens when you stop wasting energy on the wrong people. He flinched, but he didn't walk away this time. He stayed. His eyes darted between the lights and my face. I wasn't sure if I should come tonight. Riley posted about it, and I had to see it. To see you. I raised an eyebrow. Why? He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck, the same nervous tick I used to find endearing. Because I owe you something. A real apology. Not the half-hearted one I gave when I was still trying to save face. I didn't say anything. I just crossed my arms and waited. He took a deep breath. I was stupid. I thought I wanted freedom. I thought Sophia was excitement, but she wasn't you. You were home, and I threw it away. Every good thing that's fallen apart since then, I know it's my fault. His voice cracked a little, but I didn't feel sympathy, just clarity. I don't expect forgiveness, he continued. I just needed to say it out loud. I messed up the best thing that ever happened to me. I stared at him for a long moment. The old me would have cried, maybe even tried to fix him again. But this me just felt peace. John, I said quietly, you didn't just lose me. You lost the version of me that would have done anything to keep you. He blinked as if trying to absorb the weight of those words, and then I saw that flicker of realization. The one that hits you when you finally understand you can't undo what you broke. He opened his mouth, maybe to beg, maybe to explain, but I shook my head. You won't need to say anything else? I hope you find peace, John, but mine, it doesn't include you. And just like that, I turned and walked away. I walked through the mirrored corridor, the reflections multiplying around me 100 versions of myself, but only one that mattered, the one who survived. When I stepped out, the crowd erupted in applause as the lights dimmed and the final presentation began. The announcer introduced me as one of the most influential emerging designers in California. Cameras flashed. My name lit up across the massive LED screen. I felt a hand slip into mine. Steady, warm, familiar. Liam. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. His presence said it all. I looked up at the screen at my name glowing bright and realized something beautiful. This wasn't revenge. It was resurrection. People always think revenge is about hurting the person who hurt you. But that's temporary satisfaction. Real revenge, it's quiet, it's growth. It's walking through the same city that once broke you. Head held high, heart untouchable. And as I stood there, cameras flashing, the world celebrating the woman I'd become, I realized the truest thing I'd ever learned. Sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't showing them you moved on. It's showing them you never needed them in the first place. After the event, I found a quiet corner on the rooftop terrace. The city sparkled below, soft music floating through the air. Liam joined me, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. To new beginnings? He said. I smiled. To endings that taught us how to start over. We clinked glasses. He looked at me thoughtfully. So, that was your ex, huh? I smirked. That obvious? He chuckled. You handled it like a pro. Most people would have thrown their drink. I shrugged. I used to think revenge meant making them hurt like they hurt me. But honestly, the best revenge is peace. He nodded. And success. I laughed. And maybe a few magazine covers. He grinned. You've got plenty of those coming. Then he reached for my hand again, and this time, I didn't pull away. Because this wasn't about replacing what I lost. It was about finally standing in what I deserved. Later that night, when everyone left and the lights dimmed, I stood alone in front of my mirrored installation again. The city lights reflected endlessly through it like infinite versions of my journey. I whispered softly to my reflection. You did it. Not we. Not I will. You did. I smiled genuinely, peacefully, and walked out of that gallery knowing something John never would. Healing is the most powerful form of revenge. And as the night faded into morning, I didn't think of him or the pain or the past. I thought of the future of laughter, design, quiet mornings, and hands that hold without hurting. That's how my story ended. Not with bitterness or revenge, but with clarity and freedom. Because sometimes you don't need to destroy what broke you. You just need to outgrow it so completely that it can't even reach you anymore. Alright, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the story. We have so many more amazing stories coming your way, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. Our goal is to reach 100K subscribers by the end of this year, and we love for you to be part of this journey. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.